Zelos Podcast is sponsored by Kinetic IQ, where intelligence meets motion. Kinetic IQ brings a biomechanics lab into the palm of your hand, letting you measure movement anytime, anywhere, with just an iPad or an iPhone, and no wearables required. I've been using Kinetic IQ's markerless motion capture in my own practice, and whether you're screening athletes, analyzing posture and gait mechanics, optimizing performance, or guiding return to play, it helps practitioners like us save time, capture more objective data, and make instant actionable decisions. So to learn more about how Kinetic IQ is shaping the future of intelligent movement, visit them at kinetikiq.com. That's KINETIKIQ.com. You know, I can't tell you how thrilled I am to have Metabolic Elite be one of the sponsors of the Zelos Podcast. You know what makes Metabolic Elite different is their commitment to real results. I've seen a lot of supplements and performance enhancement things over the years, but they pair clinical experience with innovation, like Lipitab, their proprietary solid-state liposomal delivery system. It's a chewable format which enhances absorption, like nutrients like BPC 157 and synapses. They're delivered more efficiently in the body, supporting recovery, focus, cognitive health. Their formulas go beyond the basics, solving performance health challenges at the system level. Every product is tested for quality, it's backed by research, and trusted by athletes and clinicians alike. So learn more at metabolicelite.co. And you can get 10% off all of Metabolic Elite products by entering the coupon code ZELOS, Z-E-L-O-S. Well, you've got it tuned into the Zelos Podcast. I'm your host, Rocky Snyder. This show's all about the professionals behind pro sports. And this week's no exception. I've got Nick Jensen as my guest. He's the assistant athletic trainer for the Milwaukee Brewers. And although the season has just begun, we recorded this conversation about a week or so ago, just as he was getting from Arizona back up to Milwaukee. But before we get underway, I want to let you know I'm going to be hosting a free webinar with the help of Perform Better on April 28th. It's From Toes to Nose, the secret weapon for rehab and performance. We're going to be looking at how action from ground contact affects the ankle, the knee, the hip, all the way up through the body, and how that can be helpful in understanding rehab and performance, obviously, but some tools that you can use there. Sign up now. You can go to my website, rockysnyder.com, or you can probably go to Perform Better for that matter and check things out. Again, April 28th, it's a Tuesday. It's going to be noon on the East Coast, 9 a.m. on the West Coast. We're going to just get right into the conversation now and have a good time. Well, Nick, hey, first of all, thanks for coming on the Zelos Podcast. I know you're gearing up right now as we're recording this. You're in Arizona, but you're packing up your bags, heading back up to Milwaukee for opening day, and you don't have much time. So putting aside just this amount of time, I'm forever grateful. So welcome on.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
And so let's start off with the fact that I look at where you've been over the course of the last, say, 10 to 11 years, and you have found internships with some pretty storied baseball clubs, and you eventually land with the Brewers. Give us a little bit of a rundown as to your background, quick, like where you went to school, what got you into baseball, and how you went through all these interns to land with the Brewers.
Yeah, for sure. So from New Jersey, I guess I've always played baseball growing up, and kind of, the sport you play is kind of most familiar with. So started with baseball. First internship was Somerset Patriots. Basically had a family friend that knew the owner. So essentially that kind of hooked me up with my first, I would say, real experience with baseball, though it's not professional at the time. I think they're AA now for the Yankees, but it was independent league and kind of gave me an eye-opening of like, oh, this is pretty cool to see kind of what an athletic trainer with limited resources can do. Went to East Carolina University, I forget when, 2010, And so the head athletic trainer slash baseball athletic trainer there, Zach Womack, he's been a mentor of mine, but he hooked me up with an internship with the AA Yankees back in the day, and that was probably my first real like this is pro ball, this is how, and the staff there was incredible, and so
Right
I got
on.
a
Being a Red Sox fan, we could just skip over that, I guess. But no, just
yeah.
kidding. Go ahead. Keep going.
But it was a great experience. And that kind of got me hooked. I somehow finagled myself to work baseball every single semester in undergrad, which doesn't necessarily happen.
Wow.
Um, I think the head athletic trainer, being the baseball athletic trainer, kind of had some pull there.
You were
But
dating the TA at the time, also, weren't you? Yes.
yeah, wanted to pre-wife. But yeah, it was a really good experience, and I think that that internship, along with the experience at East Carolina, pretty much solidified that hey, like I want to do this. And so, getting into baseball the first time, which is with Atlanta, I knew prior to that I would need some sort of baseball experience working it on my own as a full time. And so I basically applied to specific grad schools that I knew offered baseball. Basically offered it the entire time. And so University of Delaware was one where I was fortunate enough to land there. And so I had 2 years with the Delaware program, working on things and learning throughout those 2 years, as well as kind of a bit of an overachiever, I guess. But I did two internships in the same season. So I had summer off from Delaware, the Delaware's team, and I wound up doing the Blue Rocks, which is right there. So that's the Royals program. And then on trips that they would be away, I drove out to Ohio and I did a AA internship with the Akron Rubber Ducks. And so those are the Cleveland Guardians at the time. So getting into baseball, like before I even had my first interview, I guess at that point I had 4 internships under my belt. So at that point I was fairly confident that this is what I wanted to do moving forward.
So the word no is not in your vocabulary, is it?
If there's something you want, you got to keep going for it, right? Like I knew baseball is what I wanted to do, and I knew there are things I've always kind of, I guess something I kind of tell myself is like I want to set my future self up for success, right? Like I really never pulled an all-nighter, so I've always prioritized sleep so I could be better in the morning and help my future self out. But it's like stuff like that where I always think about how to set myself up for success in the future. And I knew internships were going to be one. I also knew I wanted to see if this is something I liked and want to do for a career, which ultimately has been.
When did you know? What was that moment?
I would say just that first internship with the Trenton Thunder, just being in the dugout, seeing, being with the players a little bit more often. The athletic trainer there was fantastic and a really good mentor. And just I saw how, how much he wanted to help each athlete and how much pride he had in his day-to-day operations. And I remember feeling like that was really cool. And some of the stuff he was doing, I had never heard of at the time either. And so it was just a lot of, I guess, a lot of firsts with that internship. So I'd say that pretty much solidified it. Plus, it felt cool to see some big leaguers come through the clubhouse as well.
Right on. Now, your official title, correct me if I'm wrong, Director of Player Health for Milwaukee Brewers.
So that was my last title. I'm
Oh, what
now
is it now?
Major League Assistant Athletic Trainer.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So
Okay, separate that for me. What in terms of like roles and responsibilities? What's the difference?
yeah. So when I was director, essentially I oversaw all medical-based care, mainly in the U.S. So rehab. So I had a staff of a couple athletic trainers and a staff that goes along with our rehab department, as well as all the athletic trainers and the associate athletic trainers associated with all the minor league affiliates. And so I had my hand in the cookie jar in a sense of systems and processes that other directors and I would talk about how to basically streamline the stuff that was important to the front office and important to player development. And so that was probably a little bit more admin based
Yeah.
versus my role now where I'm actually in the trenches. I'm in a regular season, if 162 games, I'll cover 145 of those 9 innings. So a lot more boots on the ground, working with athletes, kind compared to what before was, you just sit on a desk and, I try to get out of the desk in the office as much as possible, but a lot of times it's computer work and Zoom meetings.
Now, normally, of course, that's flipped. Somebody that has been in the trenches eventually works into the admin. But I imagine just from what you just described now, you really missed being in the trenches, in the dugout, on the field, and so on, in the weight
Yeah.
room.
Yeah. The ultimate goal of mine was always to work with a major league team at the major league level, and impact the players on a daily basis. And so it's a little bit ironic in a sense, right? Like the way the game seems to be moving now is the staff will move up to go to AAA and then basically be a coordinator, and then you're in a coordinator admin type role for however long, and then ultimately that is where you get plucked from a major league staff, and that just seems to be like the more common way now. And it's just funny too because right, like I think I was away from a team, full season wise, 5 years, some along those lines.
Wow.
And that's always a fear too. It's like, well, how long am I away from the team until it hits a point where it's like I kind of ran my course and I'm now an admin person. And so that's actually why a goal of mine was never lose. I like working with my hands and never losing that touch. And so whether it's helping out during spring training and any of the AZ rehab based players that are at the complex, or when I go out on the road and cover each affiliate and kind of shadow the athletic trainer there, or cover for a couple days. I try to get hands on as much as possible because I never want to lose those skills and kind of keep the knife sharp. If that makes sense.
It totally does. Give us an understanding, though, from an athletic trainer's perspective, what skills, what manual skills are we talking about? And at the Arizona complex, what are the injuries that or post-op kind of conditions that you've been addressing?
Yeah. So manual therapy based, essentially like in school, right? You learn all the basic techniques, effleurage, like pin and stretch, like you learn all those kind of basic techniques. And when I went, my first role was with Atlanta for their minor league team, and the first course I took was fascial distortion model, which is an FDM. And so that was kind of my first introduction to a different type of manual therapy. And then from there, you branch out, and there's ART, there's other type of techniques. Any of the three-letter acronym names all have their own
Sure.
versions of manual therapy. But essentially, for me, is like I'm trying to accomplish a goal, and if I can do that with manual therapy, I will. And as far as the rehab type stuff that goes on, like most popular, we're gonna have a lot of elbows, a lot of shoulders, probably most common surgical sites. But we did have a lot of like random ankles, couple knees, stuff like that when I was there. And you're working back to essentially like, okay, this ankle needs to the arthrokinemax ankle need to be restored. How can I do that with some manual therapy based inputs? And I just want to like caveat, like I didn't work with the athletes the entire time. It was mainly I would just interject here and there if like the therapist was stuck, or the other athletic trainer was stuck with kind of an input, or they were like, hey, I want to bounce some ideas off you. What do you think? And so that's kind of where I would interject a little bit more.
That's kind of
Or
nice, isn't it? Where you can just be the executive chef, so to speak, and just kind of throw in some spice every now and then.
Yeah, pretty much, right? You taste the soup, and it needs a little bit more salt. And then
Yeah.
you kind of help guide. And it's easier too, right? Because it's not right at you. You're not so invested. It's like being a quarterback. You can kind of the stuff comes to you a little bit slower. You can take your time and tell you like, okay, I've seen this. I would try these two things, and then they run that play, and hopefully you get some success.
Okay, in regards to manual therapy, like fresh out of school, you've got the basic building blocks. You got the primary colors that you can start to blend together and make other colors and so on, if you will, like effleurage and
Yep.
pin and stretch and all the other ones you're talking about, ART even. But I'm curious, was there ever a time where you're like, what the heck is this approach? This looks like foo-foo or spin the crystals and smoke whatever. But then you do it and you're like, oh my gosh, this is actually legit. Ever come across anything like that? And you don't have to name it
Yeah.
necessarily.
So I think a few examples in my head, but I mean the FDM one, like right away, where I'm trying to not rocking the boat too much with a lot of different programs, but I think the physiology behind how the manual therapy pieces work is probably still being developed. And so, like the description of what's actually happening in your head, you're like, I don't know if that really makes sense, but you do the technique or you do something and you get some sort of physiological change. And at the end of the day, that's what matters as long as the athlete is getting a benefit. Um, but like maybe not manual techniques, but I've seen some exercises where I'm like, the heck is that person doing? And all of a sudden, shoulder internal rotation is restored by 30 degrees in like one move, and it's like, holy cow, that just happened. But again, like manual therapy is just to me is just a manipulation in a way that gets a desired outcome. And so if it's at any joint, if I need to do something and I can do it manually, I tend to do that to start. So the athlete knows I'm touching the issue, as well as you can kind of get hands on, feel the tissue, feel how the joint itself is moving, um, and then hopefully prime them for exercise or something that can actually now load the tissue.
Okay, cool. I like that. Yeah, there's sometimes we just don't have the answers as to why things work, but we go with it. And take me through kind of like almost like a day-to-day perspective as you progress from your role with the organization when it comes to like, oh, just prior to spring training, now you're just finishing up spring training, getting into the regular season and going into the postseason. How do your day-to-day responsibilities alter or change through
Yeah.
those key times?
So with my current role, I'll use this past season. This past year was my first year with the major league team, and so essentially, pre-spring training, I'm the one basically who lives in Phoenix, and any major league players that want to work out at the complex, I'll be here for them. And so I just help out with, the days are a lot lighter, early spring training, or sorry, like pre-spring training, like early on in the off season. And so just kind of day-to-day stuff, maybe occasional hands-on or work with some arm care programs, like basic stuff like that. Then slowly I'm starting to organize the back room, get the training room a little bit more set up, starting to figure out which supplies I need to order, starting to get the paperwork together for physicals. Right, like I'm starting to set up everything so that when the rest of the major league staff arrives, we're basically like good to go. We're fully stocked, everything's put away. We have all the paperwork needed for physical day, and so it becomes a little more admin, but you have a lot more time with only a couple athletes. Like this past off season, we had 1 to 2 athletes basically for the first 2 months of the off season. But then we switch, obviously, of all hands on deck at that point for spring training. And so my day to day changes. It's a little bit more get players ready and get them out on the field. We'll have a lot larger camp to start at the beginning of spring training. So it's, you're pretty much constantly working. And then we rotate out on field coverage, making sure that, we at least have eyes on each field, bullpens, all the above. And then, once games start, we start, switching out for games, and then eventually we break for camp, and then I'll go to Milwaukee, like I'm going here tomorrow actually, but that'll switch again, and now it'll be more uh, our smaller staff, our roster of just our players, and then again that turns into treatments, get players ready for the day, anything that needs to go on field. I'm essentially like the field coverage guy as well. And then during games as well, like I'm basically covering all 9 innings, and just communicate anytime we need supply orders or anything to the training room, anything along those lines. And then we were fortunate enough this past season to go to the playoffs and have a pretty good run, which is
Yeah.
very, very exciting. I wish everyone gets to get that experience, but it's a little bit more focused, a little bit more dialed in at that point. We make sure we have everything we need to provide the best healthcare we can to each player. The communication piece seems to be a little bit more dialed up as well, so that anything small we discuss, and anything small could actually turn into something bigger, especially when it comes to, hey, we only have one shot at this, we only have one roster, we need to make sure we have the best player available at that time for that position. And so, yeah, and then rinse and repeat as hopefully win a World Series and can get a little downtime and recycle.
Man, that would be sweet to see the Brewers in the World Series for sure. From an outside perspective too,
Yeah,
I would say that would be great. Kind of like the Twins, also
yeah,
those
like a couple
teams,
teams. Yeah,
right? So for the listening audience, like obviously, there's several that are athletic trainers, but how, and my daughter's an athletic trainer, and how I describe that to a lot of people when they ask, because it's still in the world of sports, they're not quite sure. And I say, well, they're the first responders to anything that happens, but there's a lot of stuff that goes behind the scenes, going on behind the scenes. So when the 9 innings are going on and it's game day, are you primarily in the bullpen? Are you in the dugout? I mean, obviously, you'll run out to the field if there's a need for it, but what are you doing from one inning to the next while the game's going on?
yeah. So typically, it's me and one other athletic trainer out there. We'll take turns. Occasionally, I'll just be out there by myself. Um, but I guess a couple things kind of going on, right? Like you keep your ears open in the dugout to kind of hear any chatter, hear anything going on. You watch the field when our players are out there and see, is anyone grabbing a joint, or if they're running a certain way, do they look like they move their knee around? Keep eyes on the pitcher and kind of see if anything is changing in the delivery aspect that I'm aware of at the very least, or did he throw the ball and move his elbow a couple extra movements before he got back out there again. And so you're kind of just watching for these little nuances. A lot of times you can hear the pitching coaches discuss certain things, or you hear the manager yell and say something because they've been around the game for a long time, and their trained eyes look better than ours. And so between that, I mean, right, like I'm just making sure I have enough supplies. I know if let's say we got a hit by pitch, and I know we're going to do something in between innings for that contusion, especially if it's early on in the game. I might go uh, inside. We have a little room behind the dugout where we have extra medical supplies, and I'll have a few extra things to place on the player in between innings. Um, while the other athletic trainers out there watching the field, or vice versa, I can run inside. I can communicate with the physicians inside if needed. Um, I mean, essentially, you fill up the water cups and have all that for hydration side of things. So you're pretty much just observing. It's easy to look around and look at the crowd and whatnot, but there's a game to be played, and honestly, it does. Like I know there's a lot of cameras out there, but it really doesn't feel like that. And so when you're out there, you're just watching the game. You're looking for things. I think we watch it a little bit differently than most. And so, like you said, like yes, first responder in a sense, like we are going to respond to any type of injury and make a gut call of whether this person needs to be, they can stay in, they need to be removed, do they need to be, do they need to seek higher medical care or at least be transported. And I think that's where athletic trainers can kind of come in. We're trained in all those aspects, and you can kind of make a game time decision if this player can still perform and still play in the field versus needing further medical care, and we can bring them inside. But yeah, that's I guess that's in a nutshell. Always watching and trying to prepare, and yeah, that's it.
So I'm going to go back in time here. In the 1980s, Red Auerbach is the general manager for the Boston Celtics, and during the championships against the Lakers in the June, Boston was having a heat wave, and he made sure that the visitors' locker room, the air conditioning went on the fritz.
Mhm.
Yeah. So when you go to visiting stadiums and you go in the dugout and you go in the back room like you were describing, are there things missing, or is it is it pretty good sportsmanship? What do you think?
No, it's as much as I want to say the first. It's pretty good sportsmanship. Um, I mean, we also set everything up prior to the day, like 5+ hours before the games even started. So like we have everything ready, like we're good to go. Only thing that comes to mind, I'm kind of, I guess it's semi funny. It was a hot day, and it's kind of maybe a first world problem here, but it was a hot day, and the air condition in the inside the dugout was working, but it got to a point where it was too cold, and so we had to turn it off. That's one thing I started laughing about, whether or not they did it on purpose or just they forgot to turn it off. But um, no, there are certain away teams that do a better job in regards to facilities. but also like the care. But essentially, you just communicate with the staff there, and they'll make anything that you need happen. So especially at the major league level, there's not too many people that would that wouldn't oblige to whatever we needed.
Yeah, because you've got the PBATs, right? You guys, in terms of athletic trainers, you meet on an annual basis after the season's over, whether it's November, December, or something, you've got your conference going on. And so I imagine you've built up a nice rapport and relationship with athletic trainers on other teams that have the same position as you. Is that true?
Yeah, yeah, correct. So there's probably few teams I don't know somebody on the other side, and at the very least, right, like uh, post maybe batting practice for one of our team or their team, we'll usually meet and just say hi. At the very least, just a get a connection, likely go over the EAP, the emergency action plan with the other staff. But for the most part, you start a connection, especially teams in your conference, more or less, or your division. But you see them more often, and so you can kind of get to know certain staffs well. Like I know the staff for the Cubs quite well because we see them so often. But again, like it's nice to meet people at winter meetings and put not in a tux or a suit and see them out in the field is nice. And so it's nice to kind of continue those conversations that you've built up from the winter.
We're just going to take a quick pause from this conversation to acknowledge our sponsors, and then we'll be right back. The Zelos Podcast is sponsored by Kinetic IQ, where intelligence meets motion. Kinetic IQ brings a biomechanics lab into the palm of your hand, letting you measure movement anytime, anywhere with just an iPad or iPhone. No wearables required. I've been using Kinetic IQ in my own practice, and whether you're screening athletes, optimizing performance, or guiding return to play, it helps practitioners like us save time, capture more objective data, and make instant actionable decisions. So to learn more about how Kinetic IQ is shaping the future of intelligent movement, visit kinetikiq.com. That's KINETIKIQ.com. At the forefront of metabolic elite is Jim Lavelle, internationally recognized clinical pharmacist, a chief science officer at Lifetime, and the co-chair for the American Academy of Anti-Aging Medicine. He's got over 4 decades of experience and has guided Olympic athletes, professional teams, and leading health institutions. You know what makes Metabolic Elite different is their commitment to real results. Like Lipitab, their proprietary solid-state liposomal delivery system. It's a chewable format which enhances absorption like nutrients like BPC 157 and synapses. They're delivered more efficiently in the body, supporting recovery, focus, cognitive health. Their formulas go beyond the basics, solving performance health challenges at the system level. Every product is tested for quality, it's backed by research, it's trusted by athletes and clinicians alike. And you can get 10% off all of Metabolic Elite products by entering the coupon code ZELOS, ZELOS. How about this? You've got rookies or second years, the younger players coming up, and then you've got the veterans. You're mentioning like you're keeping your eye on them during the games, and you're looking for anybody rubbing their shoulder, their elbow, or walking a certain way. Which of those kind of age ranges are more likely to not tell you something?
That's a good question. I think it really does depend because you have some rookie guys or younger guys don't have as much service time, right? And they don't want to be taken out of the lineup. They want to stay in. They want to fight for their job, especially if they've been given a chance. I would say we have a pretty good group, and I think it starts from just internally. Like we want to develop a relationship with every player that they know we have their best support, and we want them to play every single night. We do not want to take somebody out, and so that's kind of the again like going back to the nuance. Like we can decide if this is something a player can play through. Maybe we can do a couple things in the athletic training room and in the weight room, and basically support that players that they can play every night. We do have, I think the older guys care a little bit less because if a specific player wants to play, he's probably going to play, and that's just different, right? Like you have a little bit more leeway with the older the older population, where they kind of know their body at that point after X amount of years playing, and so maybe a little more comfortable. But again, it all depends. Our goal is to create a relationship with every player so that they can come in and not feel like we're going to take them out of the lineup regardless, because we want our staff to perform at their current best that day, and so whatever that looks like, we want to support that.
Great. In your toolbox, your travel bag, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
what are the things you reach in for the most? Aside from
From
tape, let's take away tape because that would be an easy answer there. But
yeah.
like whatever, and it could be a manual approach or whatever is in your toolbox. What are the tools that you reach in for more than anything else?
So for me, kind of alluding to like what I said earlier on, it's going to be my hands-on approach, as long as like and with exercise. Um, that's going to be some sort of orthopedic change that I'm trying to make. Besides that, we do use BFR a lot in like countless different ways. We have a bunch of different modalities, whether it be heat, stim, or other type of physiological like response that it's going to give out. Um, those are probably our biggest, like, yeah, like you said, tape. We don't really tape as much anymore, other than like show wrist tape for the cameras. But yeah, for the most part, it's going to be hands-on and exercise-based. Is generally my go-to approach. And then when that doesn't help, you kind of push out from there and go to your other type of modalities and maybe any like pharmacological agents. But yeah, that's probably where we're going to be.
Right on. I love blood flow restriction, but there's so many different protocols, parameters, the volume, the tempo, the load, and so on. Take me through a little bit of your favorite approach when it comes to BFR, whether it's for the shoulder, whether it's for the groin, take your pick.
Yeah, so I would say we use the two biggest ways we probably use BFR. And again, I'm speaking as a group and what I've seen kind
Yeah.
of around. Um, is mainly like the recovery setting, where you just kind of put them on, you just chill for 25 minutes, right? Like that is a way, and that's going to elicit a favorable recovery response. Um, that's been done. You can do it pregame, you can do it postgame. There's some research showing that it provides like a buffer to soft tissue injuries, doing it a couple hours kind of pregame. But
Intermittent occlusion, or is it like a
yeah, so it's 5 minutes
short
on.
term of a couple minutes? Like, what are you talking?
Yeah, like 5 minutes on, 5 minutes off, a couple rounds. We have other portable units called Saga. Basically, they're Bluetooth. And you can strap those on the legs, and we go for walks. Right, we go on a treadmill, elliptical, bike, some sort of basically 80% occlusion, and you just go for walks for 10 to 15 minutes as well. Otherwise, we'll throw it on a shoulder, kind of gain some extra volume with exercise, with hopefully not the same cost as doing heavier reps and heavier load. And so we do that, I would say, quite frequently. So those are probably the three biggest ways. We've taken a BFR throwing course, and so we've been doing a little bit more of that recently. That's kind of making its way into the mainstream. Um, Again, you can do countless different ways of using that technique, as you know, and the research is
Yeah.
kind of like you said. There's if the research says to do 30 squats, 15 15 15, right? Like that's just the way that research article did it. It doesn't mean it's the exact right way, right? So you can kind of get creative and do exercises and the approach that makes sense to you.
And chances are whatever research is coming out is dated already,
It's
just
gonna
by virtue of being research, right? You're looking at
Exactly.
3 to 5 years in the past. But okay, I I'm really like I still love diving into the minutia of BFR because like for instance, percentage based on a theoretical 1RM, or is it more subjective, or do you just start with how do you know how much to load, let's say post op, in the rehab spectrum before return to performance? Like, where do you put BFR in terms of intensity and movement? I can see it as a recovery, yeah, definitely, but in terms of helping a system increase in strength, stability, circulation without putting tremendous load on an already overloaded area. Like, how do you begin that?
So it's actually quite easy with the Delphi units that we have. Essentially, they'll go off of blood pressure more or less, and they'll create those occlusions, and they'll maintain that occlusion pressure to fit the percentage that you're looking for. And so, like I said, the 100%, that's basically like you're not doing exercise at that point. You're just relaxing. It's occluding and it's fluctuating with as your internal blood pressure is changing. And it's fluctuating to kind of keep you in this range. When you do exercises and say, like I haven't really used it post-op, just it's just not my area. But for instance, like if I want to do quad sets or I want to do some sort of like glute bridges or whatever, like short arc movements, right? Like I can probably load the quad a little bit more and get a little bit more pump more or less to that area without having to load it in other positions. And so it can be extremely beneficial where you can start getting some sort of chemical response earlier without having to load and potentially put an athlete in a position that they can't handle or adding undue stress to them.
Cool. So more physiological markers than loading percentages or even a subjective 1 to 10 range. So that's what I was wondering. Okay, are you looking at heart rate, internal blood pressure? You looking at some type of other metric that is geared toward like the autonomic nervous system to know if you're in the right spot. So you're relying on things like that a little bit more.
Yeah, correct. Like the machine we use um, is one, if not the only that I know of on kind of market that is like FDA approved in the sense of it does that. It does what it says. So other units aren't as patented, I guess, to say the least.
Right on. That's very cool. Okay. Then when it comes to the weight room itself, how much do you integrate yourself in with the performance coach, the strength conditioning coach? Like, how many touch points will you get with them? Obviously, just like any other team, you're probably doing weekly meetings and you're doing recaps of all the players, where they are, and so on. But how much time do you actually get away from the treatment tables and into the weight room?
Yeah, so getting into the weight room itself, like like we start every day, whether it be spring training or Milwaukee, with a daily player meeting, and so we have all parties that are necessary that are impacting players from performance lens. We'll all be there and kind of touch base with down the athletes that are needed to be talked about. And then for me, I guess to answer that like directly, there'll be times where I know this player hates being in the athletic training room or it's a daily like maintenance type thing, and I'll sometimes take them into the weight room to do some of that stuff. Um, Granted, like it'll be led by myself, but I'll bring them to the weight room and do some more loaded drills or specific things I'm trying to capture. But when it comes to like a rehab based or anything else that the strength group has a lot more experience in this lens, obviously, and so we'll work together. And once there's an injury or something that pops up, I communicate with the strength coach that was working with that player at the time, or at least has the best relationship with that player. And so it's probably 3 or 4 touch points a day at that point because you're touching base ahead of time. Like, hey, this is my plan. This is what I think the guy should be. We'll talk about what this guy should be running for. Like, I have a specific example in my head right now where post meeting we'll talk about, hey, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do isometrics and maybe some, you know, um, core pelvic movement type like based exercises. And then his weight room, he's gonna get him a little bit more dynamic, and we'll talk about like the running program for that day. And then I'll talk about more the cool down recovery based stuff in the athletic training room. And so like we'll use each other and bounce ideas back and forth, but it's ongoing, and it's at the major league level, information travels very quickly, and so needing to communicate those things efficiently and quickly is very important. So there's constant talking, and that's the same for any one of our staff members, which is it's just been very good. Our group communicates very well.
And out of all the stakeholders that make up your group, which one do you feel like you are really strongly connected with? And without obviously naming names, but is it the mental skills coach or the sports psychologist? Is it the nutritionist? Is it the physical therapist, the sports med doc? I mean, the team doctor, the strength coach, the skills coach, the pitching coach. Like, who is it that you're like, yeah, we're working really nicely and we're grooving.
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. Um, I think the way the way I want to answer is essentially right. Like, you're going to gel with specific staff members better than others,
Yeah, of course.
and
And you
that's
don't have
just
to be a
personality.
politician. We don't have to
Yeah,
name names, but like, yeah, you get along with everybody. I get that.
yeah, and
But
so
what's the one that are like, dude, there's something special going on right now?
um, I mean, I honestly think I mean, we're all doing a pretty damn good job this year from a communication standpoint. It's also our second year together as a group. And
Nice.
so like we've had a year to build. And so now this year, like honestly, I don't even want to just name one person because it just feels like as a group, we really are like our medical staff is communicating better than we were 1 year ago to this point. Our dietitian is very good and hearing the things that he brings to the table and again communicating with the other pieces out very like it's great to have as well as like our strength side of things like each person provides a different piece of the puzzle from rehab to the assistant strength coach to the head strength coach, right? Like we all have different pieces and then like you mentioned before like a pitching coach or a hitting coach will pop in and like there's some I connect with better than others but at the end of the day right like the information doesn't stop at the major league level so you right there's a job to be done so you have to more or less get out of your comfort zone and talk to every single person so that the pieces of information are told appropriately so that they can make a game time decision. Maybe the hitting coach pulls back on some volume pregame and focuses on a couple things in the cages instead of on-field PP. Maybe it's we push recovery modalities and other type of pieces while the strength coach can unweight them and maybe take them in the pool for a workout, right? Like we can supplement in with we have crap ton of supplements and so we can dose in specific nutrients as well and even we have a getting a more of a robust mental health program as well like a performance psychology and so we have different people who can interject differently with each player so i I hate to not just give you the direct answer here but it's right like every person plays such an important role and we really do all communicate pretty well when it comes to the athlete's care.
No, that's really well said, and definitely shows the years of admin experience that you have there too. No,
Yeah.
just kidding. That was a great answer. And so, if we could kind of roll back the hands of time, there was a time where it was just the players and the coach. And then eventually, these stakeholders started to come in, and it almost seems like most recently in the last 10 years, there have been more of these specialists adding to the plate to try to create championship teams. And what I mean by that is, yes, there was the athletic trainer, and then the physical therapist came along, and of course, the strength coach came along. But then now we're looking at maybe sports science and sleep patterns and travel and what that has an impact on the players and all the metrics that are out there, the dietitian, not to mention the nutritionist. And then you've also got the mental skills coach or the sports psychologist. Long-winded thing. You mentioned these are all pieces of the puzzle. In your opinion, is there a missing piece out of all of that? Is there one segment that it's being overlapped right now, but if you could have everybody in their own lane, is there a place that needs to be filled in?
I again I think a challenge with all those pieces as you get bigger, there's always going to be more issues with the communication piece.
Yeah.
Um, I like you said there's a lot more people probably than even you mentioned, right? Like
Yeah.
we're very big, and so I think finding the pieces that how we work together and a little bit better. I think that can always be improved, but thinking out loud there are certain things that are more important to the front office in certain aspects. And so I think we can sometimes, lose sight of other options that are available, maybe potentially other routes because we're going to sell out for X, Y, and Z versus maybe there's this specific player needs to be approached a little bit differently and a different he just can't go that same route as everybody else. And so I think understanding the nuance of the individuality of each player and how all those pieces, like you mentioned, go together to elicit a better outcome. I think that's it. Like we take a lot of data, and most teams are doing this anyway, where there's a lot of data and there's a lot of people, and every department is trying to show their importance. And sometimes you can get overly important, and for job security wise, but as a whole, right? Like we want to make sure we can work together as best we can and serve the athlete and help them perform and play longer, have bigger contracts, and everything that goes along with a better performing athlete.
Great answers. Okay, now it's time for a little rapid fire. Get your speed gun out because we're gonna see how this does. You up for that? We got about like 5 or 6 questions to throw at you.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, most underrated factor in keeping players healthy over 162 games.
Maintaining range of motion quality. I think that's a pretty big one that needs to be looked at more frequently.
Okay, soft tissue work or movement-based rehab, if you had to pick one.
So I'm more on probably like the Bill Hartman UHP side of how I view the body, and so I have my own lens, my own spin to it more than likely, but it's a combination of a little bit of him, a little bit of like PRI type stuff, and just overall like anatomy trains, like fascial movement type programming. And so I think just maintaining good range of motion and good motion throughout the body is important to, each person's going to move differently. And so you have to kind of select how that player likes to move.
If you had 10 minutes with a player post-game, what's your priority?
Post-game, right, we want them to recover overnight. So we want breath rate to be down. We want heart rate to be down. We want them to eat and replenish all the nutrients that they that they need to allow the body to start recovering and repairing. Basically all those. And so we can do that in a bunch of different ways, but we can do that through modalities, through hands-on, through exercise. So just kind of take your pick with that athlete at that time.
All right, the most challenging injury type to manage during the season.
Low back can be pretty tricky with position players, I think more so than pitchers probably. But there's a couple I have in mind that kind of nag either all season or a little bit more often than others that we see.
And last one habit every baseball player should adopt for longevity.
Sleep better.
Yeah. Good luck with that one, dude. That's a tough one. 162 games, almost half of them being on the road in different time zones and different times of playing. Then you've got double headers. Then you've got rain delays. And, man, I don't even know how they sleep, to be honest.
Yeah, you got some guys who will slam a Red Bull or some sort of energy drink in like the 8th inning or 7th inning, right? Because, again, performance every night. So you gotta sell out for performance, but kind of makes it hard to sleep at that point.
Wow. Good job on all these that I've just peppered you with and more, Nick. That was great. Can we follow you on social media? Yeah, LinkedIn, Instagram? What do you use if you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's boring. It's just basically my family on my Instagram. So if you want to see cute pictures of a baby, by all means, follow that. But yeah, nice. NDJ_Jensen. If there's anyone out there that ever has questions or just wants to connect, I'm always happy to connect.
This has been great. I wish you nothing but a successful season here, and I would love to see the Brewers make it all the way this season because you guys did a heck of a job last year. So now's the time to repeat and go beyond it. So thank you for coming on and being with me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Rocky. Appreciate being here.
Well, that's a wrap for this conversation. I want to thank Nick for coming on, of course, the Brewers organization for allowing this to take place. Remember, April 28th, I've got a free webinar. That's on a Tuesday, noon East Coast, 9 a.m. Pacific. It's all about connecting the body from the ground up, from the toes to the nose, and how you can use certain devices to help you reconnect all areas across the spectrum from rehab to return to performance. Until next week, we're going to hear one more time for our amazing sponsors, but you go out there and have a great week. Remember to check out metabolicelite.co. Check out all the products they have on their website. Synapsin Pro is something I've been using to help stay focused without having to over-caffeinate myself. It keeps me in the zone so I can just really hone in on the things I need to achieve without feeling like, man, I gotta reach for an energy drink every 5 minutes. metabolicelite.co. And don't forget, Kinetic IQ. They've got markerless motion capture for morons like me. I can use their product with my iPhone or my iPad. I can look at posture analysis, movement analysis of any exercise, gait analysis. It gives me everything I could possibly want when tracking people's movements. So, check out kinetikiq.com.